Today's presentation, Identity and Access Management in Chef Automate. Enforce effective role-based access control. Let's go ahead and get started. Nick, take it away.
Thanks, Erin. Hi, everybody. As mentioned, feel free at any point to throw questions into the Q&A widget in the dashboard here. But if you want to know what I look like, that's me. I'm Nick Rycar, and I'll be your tour guide today. We'll touch quickly at the top on ChefConf. As you might suspect, we have some updates. Spoiler alert, it's going to be a digital event this year. Then we'll dive into an overview of identity and access management in Chef Automate, followed by a live demonstration of the capabilities themselves. Once all that's said and done, I'll hop into the Q&A widget and see what questions y'all have. So yeah, feel free to keep them coming. As mentioned, we have some ChefConf updates as well as events in general. Of course, with COVID-19 being around, we are canceling any of the local events that we've had going on here in Seattle at headquarters. And ChefConf 2020 will now be a digital experience. It's going to happen June 20th, and we'll combine the Seattle and London events, so one ChefConf for everyone. There is an FAQ available, as well as a link to sign up for updates at chefconf.io. In the meantime, we have a lot of sort of digital presence. If y'all want to hang out with us, share stories, just chat about code, we've got our Twitter account at Chef. We have a Twitch channel that we've started doing some streams on at twitch.tv/chefsoftware. If you've been following us, you might have even seen a preview of some of the content I'll be presenting here today. We also have a Slack channel at chefcommunity.slack.io for Slack. At any rate, you'll find it all at community.chef.io and more, like our Learn Chef links and beyond. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into an overview of IAM in Chef Automate. And before we dive into the feature itself, a quick review for anyone who might be new to our platform of what all Chef provides these days. So our full kit is the Enterprise Automation Stack. The sort of robots that do work in this stack are 3 automation engines that we maintain. Chef Infra for managing infrastructure and configuration management. Chef Inspec for handling testing, security, and compliance, and Chef Habitat for managing application definition and management. We tie all of these tools together with Chef Workstation, which provides a local development experience to let you work with all of our tools and have nifty things like auto updates, and Chef Automate, the star of the show today, which gives us observability into everything that Habitat, Inspec, and Infra are doing in our environments. One of the things that's powerful about Chef Automate is that it gives us one source of truth across many teams and many environments. You can think of it as a single pane of glass into everything that Chef manages. It gives us real-time and historical data into all of our Chef Infra runs, Chef Inspec audits, and Chef Habitat apps, and also provides a ton of integrations. So we have the ability to set up cloud scans for AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. We have the ability to create notifications in Slack or any endpoint with a generic webhook. We have the ability to create incidents in ServiceNow or to authenticate with SAML and LDAP. So I thought it would be fun before we dive in to get an idea of what all folks are using in Chef Automate today. So you should see a poll up. I'm going to leave it up for a minute or two to give folks an opportunity to throw their submission in. But I'd be curious to know what all you're using in Chef Automate today. And it is a select many type survey. So feel free to select as many options as apply. And if you select the other unlisted option, it certainly tries to grab most of the popular features of Chef Automate, but is not a comprehensive list. I would love to hear what things you are using that are not on the list. And probably the best way to do that would be to just shoot me a little question in the Q&A to let me know. So I'll let that sit a moment, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at the results and push on. All right. Looks like we've got a pretty decent cross-section of folks. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at what y'all said. So it looks like by far, those of you that are using Chef Automate today are using it for compliance audits. And it makes sense that right behind that are the built-in CIS benchmarks and DISA STIGs, some of the cloud integrations, and then a smattering of all the stuff. So yeah, nice breakdown of folks' usage. As you might have guessed by the identity and access management, this is actually version 2 that we'll be looking at today. But if you are a V1 user, no worries. We'll cover a little bit of the migration path as well. Now, one of the nice things about using Chef Automate is not only are we collecting information across our environments in one place, but we have the ability to filter and customize the data we get back. If I want to know which of my machines are in the production or development environment, I can see that at a glance very easily. But I can also do more complicated things. Which of my machines are running the Windows operating system? Which of the machines are deployed onto a cloud platform versus my on-premises data centers? So via the metadata that Chef collects, Chef Automate is able to give us a lot of customizable views into what we manage. That said, it's not just about what we're able to see, but who we're able to work with. So if you've ever seen someone at Chef present about security, you've probably seen a slide that looks something like this. At a high level, Chef takes stakeholders that have traditionally used very different tooling to achieve similar results and gives them a unified approach for how we validate whether systems meet compliance in this case, and how that compliance or security concern is resolved with Chef Infra. Now, because we have a tool set that can bring a variety of teams and stakeholders together, it's also important that we keep in mind that those teams and stakeholders have different access and permissions within our organization. And we need to be able to reflect that within Chef Automate if we want everyone sitting at the same table. And that's exactly what our IAM does with our role-based access control, RBAC. So if individual users or groups of users in teams need to have customizable access to subsets of my estate, I have the ability to apply that in a very easy-to-use fashion to make sure every user has exactly the permissions they need to do their job without having more than they need. You'll see here it's going to be a combination of whether or not I can see machines at all and whether I have read or write access to the machines I do see. So how does this all work in Chef Automate Identity and Access Management? At a high level, there are 4 built-in roles that get deployed with Chef Automate IAM. The first is owner. This one is pretty straightforward. It's our admin user. They have read and write access to everything, and they can even manage the IAM rules themselves and create other policies beyond these. Then you have an editor. An editor has read and write access to all of the data, but not the user administration content. So I can't create and remove users or create roles, but I can create scans, add or remove nodes, etc. Viewer, as the name implies, has read-only access. Not only can they not manage any of the administrative content, but they can't actually change anything. They only can see what is currently in existence within Chef Automate. And finally, there's an ingest role. This is typically not used for human accounts, but for accounts that might be used for collecting data for ingest into Chef Automate. And what else is new in IAM v2 is the concept of projects. So we talked a bit about how Chef Automate lets you filter and customize how you're looking at subsets of your environments. It now has the ability for you to create projects that use those definitions in a repeatable fashion. Not only so that you can see those filtered dashboards within the UI, but so that you can provide access to subsets of your environment. Every time you create a project in Chef Automate, it automatically creates owner, editor, and viewer roles for that project, so that it's very easy to confine teams to whatever projects they're a part of. And with that, I'll take a quick look to see if there are any questions before jumping into the demonstration. Is there a dial in for audio? I believe that there is. If you go, and correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, the control panel widget, I think, should have all of the dial in options.
Yep.
All right. And can you answer that to them in chat as well, since the question implies they may not hear me saying that?
Yeah, I got it.
Thanks so much. All right, cool. And I will go ahead and see if I can't get this here screen share going and see what IAM looks like in practice. All righty. Folks should be starting to see my screen share. And what we're looking at now is Chef Automate's infrastructure view. So I have an environment that I've set up with a few machines that we can look at. They are currently being configured by Chef Infra, and I am running scans with Chef Inspect. Some pass, some fail. So just a little bit of stuff for us to look at. I'm currently signed in as a local administrator, so I have access to just about everything. Now, that said, I've already started creating some projects, and I have a development project created. If I want to know which of these 20 nodes are in the dev environment, well, I can just filter based on that project. And instead of the 20 total nodes in my environment, now I'm only seeing the 6 that are in dev. I can go ahead, clear the selection or uncheck it to get back my full view. But the first thing we're going to need is a similar project for production. So what does it look like to create and manage a project? Well, I've hopped over into the settings tab here, and we can see my projects. There's the development project I created earlier. And I can go ahead and create a new project. We'll call it production. Once the project is created, I can go ahead and create ingest rules for that project. This essentially tells Chef Automate how to determine which content should be consumed by this project and which shouldn't. So when I create a new rule here, I'm going to call it prod nodes. And we're going to use the node resource type and add a condition. I want all nodes that have an environment that equals production. This is case sensitive here. So if you're following along and you have environments with capital letters, make sure it's reflected. I can, of course, add multiple conditions if I want to create more complex rules. But for now, this is enough for me. You'll see once I've created this rule at the bottom, I have some pending project edits. So these rules are not applied until I update projects. I might create a bunch of rules and then I'm ready to update. And if you have a large environment, it does let you know this could take a few hours to complete. Since this is a pretty small server with 20 nodes, it'll happen more or less instantaneously for us. Once we've done that, we'll actually see this little project bar at the bottom letting us know the status and when production will be available to me. So right now, it's still applying those rules. If I try to go to production, I don't see anything. And once the project update completes, I'll be able to see all of those nodes within the window. And now as I navigate around, we can see that update progress is going to be visible for me so that I'll know when to expect that project to be working. Once all that is said and done, I should have just those 6 development machines in development, and I believe that leaves 14 that should be in production. There they are. Another thing I can do to check my work is select the unassigned project. This gets automatically created for anything that hasn't been captured by an existing project. So now I get no nodes found. That means if I assign users and teams to these projects, it should cover everything that is currently in my fleet. Excellent. So now that I have that production project created and that's all done, we can take a look at the users and teams I've created. So the editor and viewer users are global editor and viewers. So they should be able to see all 20 of my nodes, regardless of what environment they're in. And then I have a dev editor and a dev viewer and a prod viewer. So the next step here is we'll go ahead and log in as some of these users and see how that functionally changes this interface for me. Another nice thing with the filtering, by the by, is I can also see when there's compliance errors like you see here. Well, if I apply my production filter, okay, prod is safe. all of my errors are currently in the development environment. That makes me feel a lot better about that wall of red. And with that, let's take a look at this dashboard from a few different points of view. So if I sign out as the administrator, and now I'm going to log in as editor, I see most of the same content. If I go to infrastructure, I see the same 20 nodes. If I go to compliance, same deal. I can go into scan jobs and create new scan jobs if I wanted to. I can go into settings and add cloud integrations. But you'll notice in settings now, I do see the list of projects, but none of the users or teams show up. All of that admin stuff is limited to my owner. My editor just has the ability to create and manage those integrations and scans and infra. I can, however, see both dev and prod, so that's all good. Let's take a look at my next user, which is viewer. Now, again, this one is a global user, so I have access to all 20 nodes. But when I go into compliance here and into scan jobs, I can view any scan jobs that had been created in the past, but I no longer have that create scan jobs button. Same thing when I go into settings here, I can view everything, but I can't actually create a new cloud integration. I can't do any new node credentials. So I have read-only access to the whole estate. And then things get interesting when we start looking at project scoped users. So if I go into my dev viewer here, it's like the previous viewer. However, now all I can see are those 6 dev nodes. And indeed, that project bar up top is not clickable because I only have access to the development project. So this user is fully locked down. Another thing of note, if we look by contrast at my prod viewer, we're going to see something a little bit different. Because, well, I just created that production project. So my prod viewer hadn't actually been associated with anything. And if you're security minded, there's nothing more beautiful than logging in and having access to absolutely nothing. I haven't actually set up IAM for this user, so the defaults are restrictive. Let's go ahead and fix that. So I can hop back in as my admin. And I should now be able to go into settings and hey, all my options are back. So we created the production project, but there's no production team yet. And the prod viewer right now doesn't exist anywhere. He hasn't been given any privileges. So how does this work? Well, first I'm going to create a team to put that viewer in. I'd just as soon add my permissions to a team so that I can add and remove users from that team easily rather than having to manage each individual user. That said, I can go ahead and assign these 2 users as well. But I'm going to go ahead and create my prod viewers team for my prod viewer to live in. And you'll note when I create a team here, I can select what project that team is associated with. This is where I can say, you know what? My prod viewer, he gets access to both projects because I'm fine with him viewing development as well. I'm also going to be able to hop into the, let's go into prod viewers here. And I haven't added any users to it. So let's add that prod viewer user into prod viewers. And then the last thing I need to do is go into my policies. Now, when I created the production project, what did happen is that a editor, owner, and viewer policy were automatically created for me. So I didn't need to go and do that. All I need to do now is go into that production viewers and add the prod viewers group into it. You'll see that there's the prod viewer user and the prod viewer team. I'm going to add the team. And since I said I wanted this team to have access to development as well, I'll go ahead and add them to dev viewers as well. So here I'll go ahead and grab the prod viewer team. And you can see that now dev viewers, both of these teams can access, but the prod viewers, only the prod team has access. So let's see if this worked. If I log in as prod viewer now, what do I see? All right, I see more stuff now. And indeed, I can see that I have access to 2 projects and can switch between them. But different from my admin user, it now tells me that I'm specifically scoped to however many projects have been added to my user or team. And that is just about it. So as before, I will expect that I don't have the ability to create any scan jobs or do anything else. So I just have that read-only access. And while this is very similar to my global viewer right now, if I were to create more projects in the future, I have a way to dictate who of my existing or future teams and users have access. And again, I get to be non-permissive by default. So when it comes to learning more about these features, you can find the docs at automate.chef.io. In configuring Automate, actually, where am I going in here? Authentication. Oh, there we go. I just didn't scroll down far enough. Authorization. So it can be found here. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share and see what questions I can answer for y'all. All right. Can a team be mapped to one or many LDAP Active Directory groups? I don't believe that can be done directly. I'll have to check with that. I know that the users can be imported from them, but I don't believe there is a direct relationship between the IAM policies and the LDAP Active Directory groups. But I'll get confirmation on that. Let's see here. And yes, so right now it's only showing local users because that's all I have added. But users that are added via Active Directory and LDAP would show up in that same panel and can be added or removed from groups in the same way. How do I deal with rules if Chef infrastructure uses a combination of key pairs for your users? So ultimately, it comes down to what sort of filters you want to put on those rules. The key pairs themselves would be something that would be used for access to the nodes themselves, I'm assuming, in which case, if that's something that's collected in Chef attributes, that's something that can be used as a potential filter. But right now, there is a specific set of filters that can be used for the projects, most notably things like environment and policy group. So as things get further fleshed out, we'll see there'll be other things that we can select for creating those filters. But yeah, within those groups, you'll see sort of where you can make those distinctions. There is also more robust and granular access control. So those default owner, editor, and viewer users are created without you having to do anything. And especially if you've used the V1 of IAM, you can still do fully granular feature by feature rules. And that has a JSON format. There's sort of details there inside the blog. But notably, if folks are V1 users, there is a migrate to V2 command inside of Chef Automate. So you have the ability either to just run that command and it will import all of your V1 policies so that you can sort of procedurally update them to V2 and remove them as you've done that to make it as clean as possible. Or if you're just migrating to a new server entirely, you can do the upgrade to V2 and tell it not to migrate any existing policies via a flag, and then you just sort of start from scratch. So there are a lot of options, and I found the migrate to V2 and just have it pull in my V1 policies has been real easy for me to just suss out and get everything sorted. So what all needs to be in place to install and configure Chef Automate? So the good thing is really just a server. We do have the system requirements available on automate.chef.io, but pretty much any Linux server of a sufficient size is fine. You download a Chef Automate command line utility that has an install command, and that will just pull in all of the bits. It's a pretty straightforward install process. And we also have some cloud-based versions of Chef Automate available as well. There is a OpsWorks for Chef Automate is Amazon's deployment of Chef Automate that you can deploy in AWS, where they will manage backups for you, and you can just sort of bootstrap nodes to it. And there is a similar, the acronym is Chef Automate, Microsoft Azure has a managed service Automate as well that can be deployed from a pre-built image. So lots of options. And then if you want to install on your own, there are installation instructions in automate.chef.io, as well as tutorials at learn.chef.io, Learn Chef Rally. Can nodes be in multiple groups? Potentially, yes. So because the groups themselves, or the projects in the parlance of Automate, are setting up their own filters, you can have multiple filters and have those potentially grab nodes that could be in both. It just depends on what triggers you want to use to define the population of a project. So yes, you can have the same node, but the mapping is the other way around. So there's not a metadata on the node that says what projects it's a part of. The project defines what members it wants to pull based on those filters. There is also sort of a flowchart available in automate.chef.io that defines sort of how the authentication sort of does its lookup. So let's see, can an item be part of two or more projects? I think that's sort of covered under that last one. Let's see. Lively crew. Thanks for all the questions, folks. How many projects can be created? So I believe the default is 200, but it is configurable inside of Chef Automate. And let's see here. Are there more than the default? Yep, there are more than the default permissions. As mentioned, you can go on to those IAM v2 user guide to see sort of how to configure more granular permissions if you want some more power and customizability. It'll also highlight what can and can't be used for filters in there. So there's a nice reference in the docs. And yeah, we talked a little bit about migrating from earlier versions as well. Again, there is the migrate to v2 command that will go ahead and try and auto migrate your policies. Definitely always recommend doing a backup of the Automate server before doing any major config changes, so that recommendation would still apply. But so far, I'm happy to report in my testing, I've found it to be pretty easy to use. Here. I think that is all the questions that have come in so far. And I figured this would probably be a fairly quick one, since there's not much to talk about once we've talked about how we can sort things out. So I'll go ahead and hang out and see if folks have any further questions. Of course, we will go ahead and make this content available to y'all on demand. And let me go ahead and hop back over to the ChefConf slide, just because there's a lot of good wrap-up information here as well. Again, make sure to follow us on your social media accounts, Twitter and the like. Check out our streams on Twitch TV. We're trying to do that at least, I think, weekly these days. But just started up, having a fun time with it. And of course, join us on the Chef Community Slack and forums. More info at community.chef.io, and hit up chefconf.io for information about this year's virtual ChefConf. And then as far as, I think there's a question about adding AD users to a team. I haven't checked out the internet, but I think once you have the LDAP integration set up, you should be able to add any sort of user that's on the Chef server to those teams, but I will confirm. Oh, if I said the 20th, that was 100% me misspeaking and probably saying 2020 or something. It is June 2nd, 2020, not June 20th. So thank you. That sounds like a thing I would do. Classic Nick. And again, the chefconf.io page does have a sign up link. So as more details about the event specifics come out, that's a great way to keep yourself in the know.
All right. I think we're at a good spot. I think everybody got their questions answered. So I will wrap up here, Nick, if that's all right.
Sounds great.
Cool. Well, thanks again, everybody, for attending today. As a reminder, the copy of today's presentation as a PDF is located in the resource list widget, and you can download that before you hop out of the platform, or you can also just jump back in. It is available even after the presentation. Of course, hope you found value in the information that Nick presented today. So definitely encourage you to share the presentation with your team or on your professional networks. The on-demand version should be available by tomorrow, and you'll receive an email with the link to log back in and rewatch if you'd like. So look for that in your inbox tomorrow. So with that, we will close out the presentation for the day, and hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. See you next time.